Oh no, you're fine.
We'll vote next.
You don't vote next. So
What is the drink? Nobody knows why. This is wonderful.
you can go to no, he's waiting on her.
I'm waiting on her. We're a couple.
That's all. I just did. Nah, I'm just hanging out here.
Is that like all the
Oh, are we blocking your view?
Whatever it is, whatever it is, I haven't moved that thing once. Well,
Well, you gotta get focused with them too.
these are the facts.
Oh, Jaden's bandit. My God. I'm not saying. What did it do?
Oh. I was about to say who it is. Is that guys here? Okay. Yes, he said it was very nice out. It was. Because usually it's kind of cold right now. Oh, that's right. You take it on there.
Ooh, Fannie Willis. Heck yeah.
They know all the news, right? You're better. Good. Oh, no. It's just one check. Don't worry.
You had all day. Somebody is after 3. Actually, you can do the sign.
Actually, because it's after 3.
I said, no assignment. He said, every assignment started at 8:30. Yes, you could have been done at 9 o'clock this morning. The lady said something open up at 2:30.
Are you ready? I think it may help you.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now take your card and scan. And you can vote right there. Put it in the scanner to vote.
Is it face up or down?
It doesn't matter, but reads both sides.
Yeah, I hope so.
And don't touch anything, but look at the thermometer. It's telling you the steps it's taking to cast your ballot. It says the ballot successfully cast. Okay, would you like a sticker?
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good
I bet
evening.
you've had a long day today, haven't you?
Oh, yes. Since 4 o'clock.
You're ready to go home.
You're done? All right. And you left her. I thought you was a couple.
We are. I'm gonna make sure we get some more. Let's go.
Oh, good. Make sure she gets home.
I'm gonna sit over here by the spike.
All right, honey. I'll be done in a second. I'm just tired. I really need to breathe.
Tell me this after 3, so you couldn't finish it. And you said you know homework. On top of the homework you got.
Well, that was something that they was trying to start.
Yeah. Oh, y'all had, the can or the overhead? I knew foods and they tried to push it, but he said no. She's trying to watch it. Watch the inside live.
Sir, I could stand here like this because
And then at the same time, oh, I need to think of them people saying, it'll take this on home. Just on that, okay. Hi, how are you? I've been home. I know, we finna get ready.
Hi.
Hi, it's nice to see you.
You too. Have you reviewed your ballot to make sure everybody's on there that you want? If not,
sure
you can
it's
make
been
a
printed
change. But
right. Thank you.
Once you scan it, you can't make the change, but now you can. So
Thank
make
you,
sure.
darling.
You're welcome.
I better look.
Okay, may I have your pen?
Oh, sorry, that is yours.
No, you can scan it. I've given it, select any machine you want.
she's the first time.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I'm just waiting.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Can I get it off? Oh, thank
This
you.
way, baby.
No, she getting a sticker.
And you can go to Christmas.
Yeah, I gotta have a sticker. Okay. Okay, well, all right.
Give me one.
Thank you. We do that, you get next, you get to the next one. You get a free donut. That's right. Better keep moving. Have a good evening, ladies.
Okay, you too.
You gotta take them home now?
No, she said. She said she wanted a donut.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. You're welcome. Hey, age generation. And it's Lisa's. I was thinking about the side.
Watch you while you eat.
Oh, don't forget, I left mine at the bank.
I left it here, but one thing, why did you throw them all? I should have put it up there.
Perfect. The ballot's double-sided, so don't forget to flip it over. The instructions for each section is down the side. Thank you. Your wife's on the other side. I was wondering where she's at. You, yeah, she's on the other side. Yes, please. We already moved that.
I hate the wall.
Sure. I'm so glad you came. Happy first presentation. Oh, okay. Ah, okay. Can you tell me your name and address for the record, please? Joshua Shed, 11L Blackberry Road, Derry. Joshua Shed, 11L Blackberry, Derry. Everything matches and it's all signed up. Take that. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I scan that real quick? Please stick it back. I think it's quicker than me typing. I'll tell you that.
I always say I'm afraid to type.
Yeah, there we go. All right, now you can have it back. Don't need a sticker. You're gonna get another sticker when you go out. All right, so here's your ballot. It's double-sided, so don't forget to flip it over. Instructions for each section on the side. Thank you. We're gonna get ready. Yep. Thank you. Hi, come on up. Hi, I'm good. Thank you. Can you tell me your name and address, please? Cheryl Harvey, 17 Wentworth Lane. Is it all right if I scan this? Perfect. Cheryl D. Harvey, 17 Wentworth Lane, Derry. Thank you. All right. Give you that back. The ballot is double-sided today, so make sure you flip it over on the back. There's Pamela. All right, and the instructions for each section are on the side. Choose any to go there. If you need to sit, there's a table right there. Okay. Thank you very much. Hi, come on up. Hi, welcome to Derry. Is this your first one? Congratulations. Can you tell me your name and address, please? All right. Damon, Richard, Guerin, 16 Fairway Drive, apartment 2716. All right, so all right, if I scan it? Perfect. Hi there, little one. We have stickers. All right. So, Balin Richard Guerin, 16 Fairway Drive, apartment 2716. Get that back.
side.
The ballot is double-sided, so make sure you flip over the back. The instructions for each section is down the side. It tells you pick 1, pick 10, how many per section. You don't have to fill in all the bubbles, but don't fill in too many, okay? Any booth without a body in it, and then the ballot boxes are the black boxes in the front, okay? Hi. Congratulations. Can you tell me your name and address, please? All right. Cassidy Lynn Perry, 16 Fairwood Drive, 2716. Cassidy Lynn Perry, 16 Fairwood Drive, number 2716. Is it signed? Okay, if I scan this? Okay. Perfect. I'm going to give you that back so it doesn't get lost. So the ballot's double-sided. Make sure you check on the back. The instructions for each section is down the side. You don't have to fill in all the bubbles, but don't fill in too many, okay? Any booth that doesn't already have a body in it, and the ballot boxes are right here in the front, okay? Thank you very much. Congratulations, guys, and congratulations. Hi. Hi. I'm well, thank you. How are you? Glad to hear that. Can I please have your name and address? Address?
53 Misleading Avenue.
Perfect. Matthew Handley, 53 Beaver Lake Ave, Terry, New Hampshire. That's right. Handley, 53 Beaver Lake Ave, New Hampshire. That is signed. Can I scan it? Perfect. Thank you. It's quicker than me typing.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
It is. All it's telling me today is that you are, in fact, a brand new voter. So congratulations and welcome to voting in Derry. Next time you come in, it'll pop all your info right up for us. The ballot is double-sided, so make sure you flip it over. The instructions for each section are down the side. You don't have to fill in all the bubbles, but don't fill in too many. So that way. Thank you very much. Hi. Can I have your ID, please? And can you tell me your name and address?
Hannah Pretty, 16 Fairway Drive.
Is there an apartment?
From the Associated Press, this is an Election 2024 update. Live from Washington, here is Meg Kennard.
Welcome back. We're coming to you now with the first round of poll closings and the AP's first race calls of the night. The Associated Press has declared Donald Trump the winner of 2 states, Indiana and Kentucky. AP has also declared Kamala Harris the winner of the state of Vermont. Let's take a look at our live voting map you can see next to me. Now, Indiana and Kentucky show up in bright red for Donald Trump and Vermont in bright blue for Kamala Harris. You will see tonight states popping up also in a lighter shade of blue or red. That will indicate that a candidate is leading in the raw vote count at that particular moment. That color could change as more votes are counted. When AP calls the race, you will see that color darken, blue for Democrats and red for Republicans. Voting is now ended in a total of 6 states, the 3 that we just talked about, Indiana, Kentucky, and Vermont, plus South Carolina, Virginia, and Georgia. In those 3 later states, it is still too early to call the race. Joining me to talk about all of this is yet again Sagar Magani. Sagar, hello.
We get to talk about non-battleground states.
We do. Indiana and Kentucky. AP has declared that Donald Trump has won these states. Is this a surprise?
Not a surprise at all. Let's first say why the AP was able to call these right as the polls closed. AP vote cast. When a candidate has a lead of at least 15 percentage points, the AP is then prepared to call that race. And especially in these states, when you look at their history, the GOP coming into today had won 13 of the last 14 presidential races in Indiana. Barack Obama was the one outlier. Kentucky, 6 in a row. So this was not a surprise that Donald Trump has now gotten the 19 electoral votes, the first 19 electoral votes on the map. By the same token, Vermont for Kamala Harris, only 3, but finally we do get this map starting to shade in just a little bit.
And that bar across the top of the screen that our viewers can see allocating those electoral votes, another good way to keep track of kind of where we are on this election night.
The path to 270 to win, 19-3, so the night is still very, very young.
A little ways to go. All right, thank you so much. There'll be more poll closings coming up at 7:30 in West Virginia, Ohio, and North Carolina, one of our battleground states tonight. We'll leave you now with live pictures from Arizona, one of the western battlegrounds where voting is still underway, but will be closing here in the next hour or 2. Back soon.
perspective on that, Joe Biden, the black women in Georgia 4 years ago, was at 95% of their support. She is also running behind women by about 6 points. I'll leave you off with one other data point here. Again, this is the first time we were able to show you this. Education and race. Whites with no college degree in Georgia. Donald Trump, a strong showing there. He's at 77% of their support. So we have a lot more data, and we will continue to bring that feedback. I thought that was really interesting. Really so. Absolutely. So let's bring it down. So they think about this number, Brittany Newman, Marino Harold, Junior, Paul Rose, Mayor Ingram, and Robert Wolf. Great to have you here. Yeah, it looks like right now, Harris isn't getting enough from the time, at least in Georgia, that she would be able to overcome what Trump is getting from that increases in the black men. And then overall, this is going to be the question throughout the night, because the Trump people and all their surrogate groups have tried to really mobilize men. We talked about this afternoon. I mean, from Joe Rogan to Elon Musk, and all the other people down the line, they're trying to turn out that man. I'll keep an eye on Virginia, and Carl Nelson says that around. But in 2020, in Virginia, Trump lost by 9.2, and in 2016, he lost by 5. Why not? Watch what happens in Virginia. Youngkin has been phenomenal ground for Trump, and even if that lead is cut by half, let's say 4 points, that could be about what that's something to come. Also in New Hampshire, where it's not 4 lawmakers. So that is a mess up there.
90 flex race at stake, 17 electoral votes. Former President Donald Trump is expected to carry the state for the third time, but as mentioned, the race that everybody is watching is between the incumbent Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown and GOP challenger Bernie Moran. Now, Senator Brown has campaigned seeking for a term, trying to make this about reproductive rights, which are enshrined in Ohio's Constitution. And for that reason, says that it should be a non-issue in this race, and he says that Senator Brown is doing abortion into a political life.
of the country says they're on their own election. Go to that election. And their number one issue is the economy. You should listen to that. Because that's what it is. Five candidates who are going to voters and their people who bought in the second half. And we will right now in your year.
From the Associated Press, this is an Election 2024 update. Live from Washington, here is Meg Kennard.
We're coming to you now with another round of poll closings and more AP race calls. The Associated Press has declared Donald Trump the winner in the state of West Virginia. AP has also declared Republican Jim Justice the winner of the Senate race in that same state. Let's take a look at our live voting map, which you see next to me. You can see now that West Virginia is lit up in red for Trump. Voting has also ended in 3 additional states, Ohio and North Carolina. It is too early to call the race in those states, but we will be back to you with more information. Join me to talk about these AP race calls and much more is Sagar Magani. Hello. So let's talk about West Virginia. Is this a surprise for Donald Trump? You're shaking your head. I can already tell what you're going to say. This was expected.
This was expected. He ran up huge wins in 2016 and 2020. So a win in West Virginia shortly after poll closing, not even the slightest bit of a surprise that we've now added that to Donald Trump and given him another 4 electoral votes.
As our viewers can see on the top of their screen, that metric that's showing them the electoral votes for each candidate. So now Donald Trump is adding more to his side. What about the Senate race? So I have been following this race a little bit, and I can already tell you that people are probably starting to wonder if they're going to see baby dog Justice coming to the Senate here in Washington. Was this a surprise in the West Virginia Senate race?
It also was not a surprise, and it's an important thing to keep in mind tonight with, of course, naturally, almost all the attention on the presidential race. Control of Congress is in the balance tonight. Both the Senate, which the Democrats now hold coming into tonight, 51-49, and Republicans with a very slim House majority. That Senate, as of this moment, is now evenly split because Jim Justice is a Republican. He took Joe Manchin's place, Democrat/independent, who opted not to run again. So right now, with several more competitive Senate races, it is 50-50. And depending on who wins the presidency, control of Congress becomes a very, very big deal.
Speaking of one of those Senate races, polls are closed now in Ohio, where there is a very active Senate race. What are we looking toward happening there? Do you think that we'll see results there anytime soon?
It could be soon. It will not be soon enough for Sherrod Brown. He is the incumbent 2-term Democratic senator who was in a very tough fight against Bernie Moreno, who's a Cleveland businessman. Donald Trump backs him. This has been a very tough race, and Sherrod Brown is seen as one of those Democrats who stands a very good chance of losing his seat. And again, as we said, at this moment, a 50-50 Senate, that becomes 51-49 Republicans if Sherrod Brown cannot hang on to win a 3rd straight term.
The last of those states where voting is closing at this hour is North Carolina. That's one of the battlegrounds. We've been talking about it. We can see it with its other battleground friends here on this map. Again, remind us, when do you think we'll start to see some information coming in from North Carolina?
North Carolina tends to be among the earlier states, the quicker states to count its votes. Now, how quickly that will go based on some of that damage in western North Carolina from the hurricanes, which by all accounts has done a great job actually conducting the voting. Now the question is how quickly they can count those votes. So whereas you would usually get fairly quick results in North Carolina, might take a little bit longer than it usually does this time.
Got it. We will keep an eye out for more info, and we'll be back with you soon. Thank you all for being with us. At the top of the next hour, we will have more poll closings. Actually, the night's biggest round, 16 states plus the District of Columbia. That's a total of 171 electoral votes, including 19 from that battleground state of Pennsylvania. We'll leave you right now with live pictures as they come into us from New Hampshire, up in New England. Back with you soon with more AP race calls and poll closing information.
you in the mood for? Our university's a multicultural melting pot. I heard that. Let's go.
is the magic.
We got a long way to go. A lot of filling in of this board and these states, but some places are getting very interesting as we get closer to our next round of poll closings, which are coming up in just a little while. And that will include Florida, where the Trump campaign is watching the results tonight. Let's go to Steve Harrigan. He is at Senator Rick Scott's campaign headquarters in Bonita Springs, Florida, which has
some other things that you like?
I think some Supreme ballot is coming in. In Indiana, 70% of the voters put back to President Trump. Loudoun County, Virginia, the young Greens are trending to the left. It's going to swing to the right by 8 points compared to 2020. So you look at something like that and you understand why Carl Rove today said it could be tight in Virginia. Fayette, Georgia, Trump +2, that's a place that I had said earlier on, Harris will have to do well there to compete in Georgia. Also, as Pennsylvania closes its polls, Brett, I think it's worth noting, Martha, that this is a political malpractice that she didn't pick Josh Shapiro between the fracking, the school choice, Jewish Americans. But I think that it would felt like that today.
We will look a lot at Pennsylvania. Election night is not just getting started. These secrets away from 17 states across Washington, D.C., including New Hampshire, Illinois, Tennessee,
which has never voted for a Republican and continues not. If you look at the Electoral College and the race to 270, it obviously changes with all of these numbers.
Let's get back to it. Think it's a game.
From the Associated Press, this is an Election 2024 update. Live from Washington, here is Meg Kennard.
Welcome back. We're coming to you now with another round of poll closings and more AP race calls. The Associated Press has declared Donald Trump the winner in the following states: Alabama, Florida, Mississippi, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Tennessee. AP has also declared Kamala Harris the winner in these states: Massachusetts, Connecticut, Maryland, and Rhode Island. Let's take a look again at that live voting map you see next to me. These states called for Donald Trump are showing up in red, and states called for Kamala Harris are appearing in blue. At this hour, voting has also ended in 16 states plus the District of Columbia. This swath of closings stretches from Maine and New Hampshire down to Alabama, Tennessee, and Mississippi in the South. Joining me now to talk about all of this is yet again Sagar Magani. Hello.
Hello.
So with these race calls that we have at this hour, what do you see in them? I know that Florida is a massive tranche of electoral votes. The AP has called it for Donald Trump. Is this a surprise?
This is a state that has not gone Democratic in a presidential election since it went for Barack Obama in 2012, and that was a very narrow victory. Donald Trump won Florida in the last two races, both in 2016 and in 2020. So while people still do think of Florida because of those 30 votes, because of what it was in 2000, this was largely expected, and it drives up that vote total. As you can see, Donald Trump now approaching triple digits. He has 60 more electoral votes than Kamala Harris, but these are in states that were expected. Alabama, Oklahoma, where Republicans have just won massive victories in the last 5 elections, 65+% of the vote. So it's kind of going according to what we thought it would have so far, keeping in mind that the 7 battlegrounds still to be decided with those 93 electoral votes between them.
Right, a big chunk to come in those places, and probably a while before we really have the numbers to add to that map there.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, and thank you all. We will be back with more AP race calls and updates as we get them. But we'll leave you now with these pictures from San Francisco, where voting on the West Coast is still ongoing at this hour, and polls will be closing soon. Back with you in a moment.
changed in Douglas County. With the net being 17,360, that would be good news for the Harris campaign if there's no opposed there in Douglas County. Let me pop out your money. Show you everything that we were looking at. The Georgia man said, I can. Just before we did the Fox News video analysis and the networks exit polls showed the former president doubling his percentage of black men in Georgia. He was at 11% and now 25% with these two surveys today. So that may sync up with what so that's like starting to match the right. That it may sync up with what we're seeing now with the count. And we got almost half the votes still out there, okay? 52% is the estimated number of votes that are in tomorrow, okay? So roughly 38% out there. This is Fulton County. This is Kamala Harris. She's going to win the county, okay? But look at the raw vote. It's impressive, 129,000. But look at Joe Biden here in the same county, okay? 242,000. You have to look at the precincts and where the rest of the remaining vote comes from. Maybe we take a look at that in all of you. But that would be, one of 159 in terms of population. So maybe what you're saying is that the African American law vote there is true in places like Fulton County, Georgia. It's going to cost you because there's still a lot of vote out there. But we have to keep a very close eye on Fulton County still in Georgia.
Any indication that turnout is a bit lower than 2020?
Before election day, Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State, set up an awesome website. And he's counting on counting the early vote. One thing that was evident from the April vote, this time it's early vote. The African population in Georgia is about 33% statewide. What the political analysts will argue is that we need that statewide Democrat. We need 30% of that vote. The early voting in Democrats, Kamala Harris was just a tick above 26%. So that's another indicator, maybe another data point that we need to keep an eye on as to what Brad is talking about. Where were you looking at?
Well, I've been keeping an eye on this issue that we're bringing to the analysis fully democracy is the most important factor to prevent violence and a lot of people know that. Now, Trump gets it, but 60% of the people not fit that is about right. Trump, you fear Trump, but it's the same factor you keep coming back to again. The Trump factor is great. The difference today is about that's what
because if you were just right on the issue, the most important immigration, we wouldn't see that.
And it was a huge win for 2020, and it also reduced our relationship with candidate selection in 2022 that we got blamed for. So the question is, are we going to see the increases with approval numbers translate into something positive?
Can I clarify something? And it was hammered over and over again by former President Biden, the former candidate. You know, the direction democracy was really on his list pretty much every day. That's President Harris didn't take that role for a while. But she did come back to it towards the end of the
you think about, go back to January 6th, which was supposed to be the one that we like to fear this, our democracy was fragile. It was the premise of the January 6th special committee that we had as a co-chair that we couldn't afford to lose our democracy. It's ridiculous. Our democracy is still scared. So it's not I think it's all right.
Speaking of that, Senator Aisha Hasmi, Trump campaign headquarters. She is in West Palm Beach, Florida tonight. What's the news?
let's check in with Jackie Hunter. She's at the Harris campaign in Washington, D.C.
Hey there, guys. It's quite a different scene out here compared to where Aisha is. Aisha knows that at Harris headquarters, we don't actually have Harris campaign officials because they're all in Wilmington tonight. So we're trying to get a sense from campaign officials about who was invited to this event, how many thousands will be here, who's in the crowd. But I am hearing from people close to the vice president who've been watching these reports come in. They've started tonight very anxious about Georgia, and the first factor down at the beginning is leaving them feeling pretty poorly about it. A source close to the VP says they're seeing a really high turnout in the Metro Atlanta area, and as of a short while ago, they had a 10+ point lead among women showing up. And also, they noted that black turnout was slow to start, but it is finishing strong, and they attribute that to their get out the vote effort. One thing they've been wrestling with is whether or not they underestimated Trump's get out the vote effort. So far, they're not seeing signs of that, but they're definitely feeling happy about that first report looking at the Georgia race.
All right, Jackie, thank you so much. Before we make some race calls, I'll have you on the clarify something. The 58% swayed to the Florida abortion initiative, but it didn't pass, though, because you had to have 60%. So I misspoke, but it got 58%, but there were about 2. And matter of fact, we had a marijuana initiative, which I would have voted against. So it didn't reach the numbers after we get to 60. Yeah, no, so Governor DeSantis is talking both of those things. Okay, we have some calls.
We begin in Pennsylvania after a third Senate race between incumbent Democrat Bob Casey and Republican businessman Dan McCormick. The Fox News decision desk says this is too early to make a call in Pennsylvania on the race.
This could be a big cheer. Fox News can project that Rick Scott, the Republican senator from Florida, will win his second term. It calls for applause down there with Aisha. In Maryland, it's too early to call the race between Democratic County Executive Angela Ashenwitz and former Republican Governor Larry Hogan. Ashenwitz has a lead, however, in our Fox News voter analysis as we wait for the vote to come in.
And to our home Missouri Senate race between Republican Senator Josh Hawley and the Democratic Attorney Lucas Hughes. Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn, though, we can tell you, will win once again in the state of Tennessee, another reliably conservative state.
In Mississippi, longtime GOP Senator Roger Wicker will take home another victory. The Fox News decision desk can project that in Massachusetts, Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren will win.
Connecticut's Democratic Senator Chris Murphy will also win a third term. Not enough data to project the main Senate race quite yet.
In New Jersey, Democratic House Rep Andy Kim will win his Senate race, putting him in the chair for the first time. This is the Democratic race. In Delaware, Democratic House Representative Lisa Rochester will win her first Senate race.
In Rhode Island, Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse will return for a fourth term. And let's take a look at the balance of power and how it shapes up at this point in the evening. 8:18 on the East Coast, 33 Republicans securing their seat in West Virginia. The Senate Jim Jones in West Virginia. The Democrats have secured their seats in the Senate and in the upper chamber as well.
Voters starting to dump in from those early states. More democracy 24 coverage ahead as we wait the next round of poll closings.
Please welcome the president of Howard University, Dr. Ben Bissell.
From the Associated Press, this is an Election 2024 update. Live from Washington, here is Meg Kennard.
We're coming to you now with more AP race calls. The Associated Press has declared Donald Trump the winner in the state of Arkansas. AP has also declared Kamala Harris the winner in Delaware and New Jersey. As you can see on the live voting map that's next to me, it's continuing to fill in with states for Trump in red and states for Harris in blue. And that ticker at the top of the screen is indicating how many electoral votes are being allocated to each candidate. At this hour, we also have more information coming to us from AP Votecast. That's that expansive survey I talked about earlier of the American electorate. With me again is Ashley Kurtzinger from KFF. Hello.
Hi, we have new data for you.
Tell us about the new data. What do we got?
We've been talking a lot about the factors that are motivating voters, and now we're looking at Harris voters versus Trump voters on their most important factor that's motivating them. What we see is 2/3 of Harris voters say that the future of democracy is the single most important factor in their vote, outflanking both abortion and inflation. Among Trump voters, about similar shares say immigration and inflation is their most important voting factor.
That's so interesting to see that reflected in the data, things that we hear anecdotally from voters along the trail, but now as they're actually going to the polls, these are things that seem to have resonated with them on this election day.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things, that's not different across the two groups of voters is why voters are turning out. And what we're seeing is a majority of Harris voters and Trump voters saying they're voting in support of their candidate rather than in opposition to the other candidate. So about 2 in 3 Harris voters say they're voting in support for Vice President Harris, while about 8 in 10 Trump voters say they're voting in support of former President Trump.
So not necessarily something that we would maybe see as a protest vote, but a supportive vote of actually believing in that candidate and not just disliking them less than they like the other person.
Yeah, and it seems like it's even mattering more in some battleground states. In Georgia, for example, where the polls are closed, we're seeing about 3 in 4 Harris voters saying that they're showing up in support for that candidate, which is similar to the share of Trump supporters in that state that say the same.
Ashley, thank you so much. It's really interesting to see the information kind of behind the data. As you can see now in those boxes below me, we've had pictures up all night from the Trump and Harris campaign rallies, but it looks like those events are starting to fill in with more and more people as we get further into this election night. We can also confirm for you where the candidates are at this hour. Vice President Kamala Harris is at her residence at the Naval Observatory here in Washington, and former President Donald Trump is at his Florida residence in Mar-a-Lago. We will be back with more AP race calls and updates as we get them and bring them to you. At the top of the next hour, we also have another big round of poll closings in 15 states. That includes several battlegrounds, including Michigan, Wisconsin, and Arizona. And we will leave you now with pictures from Arizona, one of those western battleground states. Back soon.